So if you have any concerns or you don't want to be on screen, you can just turn your video off. But we will be recording it and sending it to other members who maybe couldn't make it. So thank you again for attending the briefing hosted by the Abolish the Tax Lien Sale Coalition, which is an amazing group of many advocates from across the city who've been working on this really for many, many years, not only on the advocacy piece around making sure the tax lien sale doesn't get authorized, but also really supporting homeowners in meeting deadlines around hardships and door knocking. And so a lot of work has gone into this coalition. And so today we're really just going to hear, for folks who don't know too much about the sale, just like a brief introduction of how it works, a little bit of the history, and then really how we can restructure it. As many of you all know here, it wasn't reauthorized for this year, but it doesn't mean that it can't ever come back again. So this coalition is really wanting to put time and energy on how to permanently restructure this and ensure that it never gets reauthorized in the way it has been functioning. And I'm sure I don't have to tell some of you, but this sale is really hitting communities of color, communities where you have had long-term home ownership by individuals for a long time, aging homeowners. It's really hitting our neighborhoods hard. The top 5 districts that got hit from last year's sale are District 41, which is Councilmember Mealy, Councilmember Hanks' district, Councilmember Williams, and Narcisse, as well as my own. So I'm not going to take up much time. I'm going to let the folks who've been really thinking about this for years do most of the breaking of it down. But I just wanted to thank you for being here, or for allowing your, making it a priority for your staff.
I'll mute right now. Let me know if it's me.
And I would ask everyone to mute if you are not speaking. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Deborah or Paula. I think Paula from the Abolish the Tax Lien Sale Coalition. And we'll take questions at the end, but you can type some stuff in the chat. And I believe folks are down to answer some stuff in the chat too. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks so much, Sandy. Just a quick introduction. Paula Siegel from Take Root Justice. I'll talk a little bit more in a moment. Will Spisak from New Economy, which is also a member of the Abolish the Tax Lien Sale Coalition, is moderating the chat. So if you have a burning question as we go through these slides, feel free to drop it in the chat. Will may even answer it. Otherwise, he'll help us answer the burning questions at the end. And I'm going to turn it over to Deborah Ack from the East New York Community Land Trust. Ryan, if you don't mind moving to the next slide.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to give you a brief description. I'm Deborah from the East New York Community Land Trust, and I'll be giving you a brief description on who we are as the East New York Community Land Trust. We were founded in 2020 as a grassroots non-for-profit organization founded in East New York and Brownsville. We consist of residents dedicated to preserving affordability for future generations and providing a vehicle to create generational wealth. Our aim is to protect, stabilize, and expand the stock of affordable homes, locally owned small business, and green spaces in East New York and Brownsville for the benefit of our extremely low to moderate income BIPOC residents. We center community organizing, education, and multi-generational engagement as the grinding force of how we approach our work. Planning and development in East New York should be led by us, for us, the longtime Black and Brown residents who are organizing and building power so that the public land remains in community hands. Next slide, please. Paula.
Thanks. Paula Siegel. I am Senior Staff Attorney at Take Root Justice. We are a law and policy organization that supports grassroots movements and movement organizations in New York City to ensure that the people who've built this city do not get pushed out in the name of progress. And we are also proudly a member of the Abolish the Tax Lien Sale Coalition. And with that, I'm going to just go right into a sort of detailed, sort of maybe a lot of information coming at you at once, rundown of how the tax lien sale used to work, how it worked from 1996 until it expired last month. If you were on a little bit earlier, or here, I'll just put a link in the chat to where this diagram lives on the internet. So if you want to follow along, I'm going to break it up as I go, but feel free to open up that link for your reference later or to follow along now. Ryan, if you could go to the next slide, thanks. So the first part's pretty straightforward. Property owners owe property charges. The city sends them bills. If they don't pay on time, the city sends them notices. Then it starts adding interest. And then it says, after a certain amount of time, okay, we're about to sell this to the tax lien trust, which is a private trust that is not a part of the city of New York. You have a deadline, and then after the deadline passes, the city does sell a whole book of liens. They don't sell individual liens, they sell every single unpaid bill as one of thousands of bills for which the tax lien trust, which is an investment vehicle, pays the city 72% of face value. Next slide. Ooh, the other way. Thank you. At the moment of sale, there are fees that are added just because the sale happened. And then the trust contracts with private servicing companies. We get to keep that money. The trust itself raises money to purchase the liens at that.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the test file. I don't see the union.
Sorry,
I'm on my phone. I can't access it with my computer. I don't see the union indicator column.
Ryan, can you mute this person?
I have no idea who this is, but I would mute them if I did. Are we good? Sorry about that. All right, so the way the trust raises money is it actually issues bonds and promises returns to investors. They're accredited and institutional investors, not individuals. And the bondholders generally make their 3% or so interest within 3 years of having this interest in this security. Most people who have their liens sold to the trust pay. They mostly pay within 3 years, but they pay a lot more than they initially owed the city. They pay the fees just for the pleasure of having their debt sold to the trust, and then they pay the fees to the servicing companies as well as interest. The servicing companies make millions just on the upfront transaction, and then they can charge up to 18% in interest. Brian, can you go to the next slide? Thanks. So then the trust owns the lien, and the trust, in owning the lien, actually has the right to foreclose. And very soon after having the lien on a property in its name, the trust will start to threaten to foreclose. It may take a very long time to actually start a foreclosure case in court, but in the period where they're threatening to, homeowners panic. Many of them, in order to pay, take out predatory private loans, basically ballooning the debt that they owe to the city to astronomical amounts. Some will sell, and some, like landlords who are milking their buildings for rent, will just not pay. They'll neglect repairs. They'll assume that a foreclosure is imminent, and they'll just take as much money out of the property as they can until a foreclosure happens. The trust can start foreclosure, and if it gets a judgment of foreclosure, it will sell the properties at auction. The auction is to the highest bidder, market value. Nobody has a say in who gets those properties, and tenants certainly have no say in who becomes their new landlord. In the process of foreclosure, additional fees are added, and if there is any money left, although for the property owners, homeowners and landlords do have the right to collect it, such big chunks of it are taken out for fees and for legal fees that they lose a lot of the equity that was in the property in the first place. Next slide. Ooh, can you just click one more time? Deborah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, sure. Who benefits from this system? As you can see, the investors in the trust, which charge astronomical fees and penalties. Debt collectors and services who also add their fees to it, city agencies, and bad landlords. Next slide. Okay, as you can see, this individual homeowner owed in back taxes $46,149.02. Because of the interest, which is $12,738.20, plus an additional fee of $7,144.83, the amount owed is now out of reach for the homeowner to try and resolve this. Who benefits? The investors in the trust who do not give back to our community, but instead raises the price of the home so that the community residents can't afford to purchase the home. The debt collectors and services who profit off of the homeowner's misfortune. That's who benefits from it. Next slide. I got ahead of myself. Okay. Who suffers as a result of this system? Homeowners, because now they're being displaced, they're losing their homes. Tenants, because they're forced to live in deplorable conditions because the landlord is not doing repairs. BIPOC communities, due to the fact that they cannot afford the home that has been purchased by the real estate investors, by the investors themselves, the tax lien investors. Who else suffers as a result of this system is the working class people. Our people who live in our community, who have worked hard and would like to purchase a home, can no longer afford to purchase these homes that fall into a tax lien sale. Next slide. Paula?
As Councilmember Nurse mentioned in her opening, the hardest hit districts by the tax lien sale are the places where low-income BIPOC communities live in this city. Here's a list of the top 10 hardest hit districts. These are the places where the most liens have been sold, were sold, in December 2021 on individual homes, on apartment buildings, on commercial buildings, and on vacant lots, allowing those opportunities for the city to intervene and create better situations for our neighbors and for our neighborhoods to slip through our fingers. Next slide. A different way to look at the same data is to look at a map of the city as a whole. And what we've done here is actually take the 2021 lien sale and map it against census information that shows us the percent BIPOC of people living in each census tract. And it might be a little hard to see on the screen here, but the concentration of dots, pink and blue in areas that are the darkest on the map, in areas where the most BIPOC people live, according to the US Census, is really jarring. These are also the areas that have been the hardest hit with predatory lending, with our history of urban renewal, and with every successive wave of disinvestment and creating a situation in which we have really a tale of two cities, two different ways in which place is handled by our city administration. Good morning. Can you go to the next slide, Ryan? Just another way to look at this information, the number of tax liens sold by census tract, the comparison between majority white tracts and tracts that are majority Black or majority Hispanic is really jarring. We're talking about five or 10 times as many liens being sold in Hispanic and Black, majority Hispanic and Black census tracts than those where the majority of property owners are white. Next slide. The lien sale leads to flipping. We know because the Center for New York City Neighborhoods did a longitudinal analysis that more homes with liens sold on them are 3 times more likely, almost 4 times more likely to change hands 5 years after the sale. About 13% of 1 to 3 unit Brooklyn homes sell in a 5-year period. But if you just look at the Brooklyn homes that had a lien sold on them, that number jumps up to 42%. This particularly impacts seniors who sell their homes, who are the majority of 1 to 3 unit, homeowners in New York City, and are pushed to sell their homes and pushed out of the city through the lien sale. They get pushed out through the process that I described earlier, but they also get pushed out because as the city publishes its list of who is eligible for the lien sale as part of its pre-lien sale process, the addresses of the properties that are on that list are published, and that opens homeowners up to scams. That means that creates a list of targets, that folks who are looking for deed fraud victims, that folks who are peddling predatory mortgages, that folks who do not believe in the future of our families in our communities get to use as a map of who they should reach out to. Next slide.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how the tax lien, how it affects tenants. When we talk about tax lien, most people think of homeowners, but it also affects tenants in the way that landlords take on big debts and have intense pressure to pay them back. They often cut back on basic building maintenance to reduce expenses, or harass and evict tenants to raise their rents in order to pay back these big debts. Eventually, they fall behind on bills and end up in a tax lien sale anyway. An analysis by the city found that in the 6 years between 2014 to 2019, 881 multifamily buildings citywide had liens sold multiple years, and 429 of those buildings were in Brooklyn. Instead, we could either help good landlords fix the buildings or take the building away from abusive landlords and preserve them through CLTs. Next slide. Also, vacant lots are also a part of the tax lien sale. Vacant lots sold on the tax lien sale equals squandered opportunities. In 2021 lien sale, buildable lots zoned residential equaled at least 137. Total square footage equaled at least 891,796 square feet. The number of units that could have been built to add to affordable housing stock is at least 1,115 units could have been put on these vacant lots. Next slide. So the tax lien sale is bad and unnecessary. What should we do instead?
So just to remind everybody where this thing came from, this was a right-wing think tank's dream. Arthur Anderson, commissioned by Mayor Rudy Giuliani in 1995, created this special securitization system to privatize debt collection and create a way for there to be fewer municipal employees. Even though no other city works this way, the system still operates here 24 years later. It's time to really put it to rest. Ryan, can you go to the next slide? And can you click it again? Sorry about that. So between 1996 and 2011, the average rate of collection in the first year of tax levy for New York City property owners was 92.4%. That means during the time that the tax lien sale was happening every year, 92.4% of property owners paid their bill within 1 year of receiving it. That's less than the median for cities around the country in those same years, most of which didn't securitize debt and didn't sell liens at all, and actually significantly less than cities that never securitized liens or had any system like them. Ryan, can you click the next? Sorry. So Los Angeles's rate of collection Same period, 94%, San Francisco, 97, Boston, 98. In 21 states, actually, lien sales aren't even legal. Next slide. So what do we do instead? Deborah, can I turn it back to you?
Sure, Paula. So what do we do instead? Okay, hold on one moment. I need to be able to see this. Ooh. Okay, what do we do instead? We abolish the tax lien sale first and foremost. We establish an equitable property tax collection system with the goals of keeping tax delinquency rates low, preventing displacement, curbing speculation, improving conditions for tenants, promoting community ownership, preserving and developing affordable housing and public space. Step 3 would be to ensure that public sector workers and community organizers have the resources they need to secure just outcomes. Next slide.
So just to remind everybody why we're here talking to the council, this lien sale can only happen with city council authorization. The last authorization, which was only for 1 year, expired in February 22. There's been no renewal bill introduced, and we genuinely hope there won't be one. We do still have the third-party transfer system authorized for buildings that have a lot of debt and a lot of physical distress. That system allows the city to foreclose and transfer property to a developer. All the equity is lost when that happens, but the tax lien trust is not involved. That's something the city handles on its own and partners with its partners in the housing sector. And in 2020, we worked with advocates in the council to pass a law that actually forbids Department of Finance from selling tax liens on most charity-owned properties. This is our current status, and we hope to work with the folks here in the room. Ryan, can you go to the next slide? To fill in the gaps and create a new system that actually incentivizes payment, but also stabilizes our communities. So at minimum, Department of Finance should do more robust and sustained outreach to small property owners who have debt and make it easier for them to apply for exemptions. That outreach should also be done by neighborhood-based organizations. Both East New York CLT and Take Root were part of outreach this year, focusing on homeowners in East New York and on charity properties around the city. And with just a little bit of funding from the city, we were able to reach hundreds of property owners and make sure that they actually had their paperwork in so that the city was handling their debt correctly. For most low-income homeowners and for charity property owners, there are exemptions, there are veterans benefits, there are abatements that they can apply for, and getting direct outreach was the way that folks were able to get access to those. Also, at minimum, Department of Finance should forgive debt that was accrued due to deed theft and similar travesties. The department sends bills for taxes and for repairs to owners who are actually out of ownership, who don't have their deeds during the time where they've actually had those deeds stolen from them. And even when the state investigates and reverses the sale, the city sends bills for the intervening period to those property owners. It's extremely unfair, particularly when deed thieves allow properties to run down and then the city is forced to do emergency repairs, which become part of the bill. Next slide. So once we've forgiven the debt that needs to be forgiven, and we've done the outreach to make sure that folks who need to get their paperwork in order, have their paperwork in order, there are going to be some property owners who still don't pay, right? Who still aren't able to pay, maybe still don't want to pay. Maybe there are landlords who are just milking the buildings for a short-term investment, and they're not planning to invest in the future of New York City. So there's some options for what the city can do when the debt accrues anyways. As we said at the beginning, the Abolish the Tax Lien Sale Coalition is very focused on community land trusts as a preservation strategy for New York City neighborhoods. And we think one strong option that the city can use is to give owners of properties the option, the choice to transfer land to community land trusts in exchange for debt forgiveness. The owners would keep the buildings. They would keep the home, they would keep the apartment building. If it's a commercial space, they would keep the space that the building that the space is in, excuse me. But the community land trust, working with the city, would take title to the land and then regulate what happens on that land through a ground lease, making sure that the owners of the improvements don't again fall into debt to the city. So that's one option. The city also has the option of putting subordinate liens on properties and imposing tenant protections for the life of the lien. A subordinate lien is one that doesn't lead to foreclosure, but is paid whenever the property is sold. So the lien would just accrue interest, the debt would be there, the homeowner would get to live in the property, maybe their heirs would get to inherit it, but at any time when the property is sold, the city would be paid first. The city would be paid back first. The existing third-party transfer program, which I described a little bit a couple of slides ago, is still a good option for buildings that where there's a lack of repairs, where landlords have really left tenants behind. We believe that the city should retool the program to make sure that communication is better and that the wrong properties don't end up in that program, and make sure that the community development corporations who work with the city in that program work with community land trusts to make sure that there is long-term preservation of these properties. Right, I'm just realizing the last bullet is probably cut off here, but we'll do our best. And finally, the kind of the most straightforward option is the city just straight foreclosure. That's what most cities do, is they enforce the debt that is owed to them through a property action. But we're hoping that when the city does that, it again works with community land trusts to invest in long-term neighborhood preservation. And after foreclosure, transfers the land to a community land trust while it sells the improvements, while it sells the ground lease and the building to a new buyer, which could be the tenants, right? This could be, if anybody has been following the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, this could be an opportunity for tenants to purchase their buildings. It would be a good opportunity for those tenants because the price of the building would be discounted by the value of the land. And of course, anything that is left over in terms of money that actually the city gets for the property would go back to the former property owner. So the former property owner wouldn't lose all of their equity depending on how much they actually owed the city. Next slide.
Okay, so Paula has mentioned CLTs, community land trusts, but I'm just going to run through quickly and explain to you just how and what a CLT is. First of all, a CLT is a nonprofit organization governed by the community members for the purpose of owning land to maintain affordability. First, the CLT acquires properties, vacant lots, or sites with built structures. It keeps ownership of the land, the actual ground you stand on, and leases use of the land to a property owner that owns the structure that sits on top of it. A property owner purchases or develops the house or building that sits on land owned by the CLT. The property owner also enters a renewable agreement with the CLT to lease the land from the CLT in a long-term 99-year ground lease. Next slide. So you may be asking, well, how does the CLT model work? Well, the CLT is composed of a tripartite board and interest. Because CLTs are responsible at the same time to the current users of the land it owns and to the larger community where the land is, and to future users and community members, it makes sense that most CLTs have what is called a tripartite board. There are three groups that are usually represented on a CLT board. Current users, whether there are tenants, homeowners, businesses, gardeners, etc. The ideal is that they are going to bring in the interests of those using the land now. Another part is other community members with an interest in the CLT. The ideal is that they would bring in the interest of people who want to see the CLT expand in scope and into the future. The third part is a group of others, often technical assistant providers or other people with specific skills that can help the CLT be stable enough to last into the future, and who might be able to resolve disagreements between current users and community members. Next slide. Paula?
Thank you. In the chat, I just referred to nicely the New York City Community Land Initiative, and along with East New York CLT and Take Root Justice, where I work, there are 18 other organizations in the city that are working to either create or have created community land trusts that own land the way that Deborah just described. So here's a map of where they are. We are working hard every year, expanding the initiative every year. I want to thank everybody here for providing crucial city council funding that is the seed money for each of these groups and for the initiative as a whole. And we hope that in the next 5 years, we'll fill in the gaps on this map. Next slide. If you want to learn more about Community Land Trust, nicely we'll be doing a briefing, also co-hosted by Councilmember Nurse's office on April 6th at 3 o'clock. And you can please hold the time and you'll be getting an invitation soon. Ryan, do you want to say anything more about that?
No, I think we're co-hosting with Councilmember Rivera's office as well. And yeah, we look forward to seeing as many council members' offices as we can, and we'll be doing some outreach ahead of time.
Great. Can you just click one more time? Oh. So we need to forbid the city from selling liens to a third party that is looking to make money off of our communities immediately. We can't go back to the bad old days of Rudy Giuliani. And then we need to work together on an equitable system built out of the building blocks of what we know works, built out of the energy of communities and organizations that we have been working with and that are committed to the long-term future of New York City. We need to create a new and more equitable system for how to handle delinquent municipal debt. And I'm personally very glad that Councilmember, go back. Those are just in case anybody asks. The Councilmember Nurse's staff is here to convene you all, because I think for our next steps, we're really in a place where we can be really creative. We have done a lot of thinking about what a new system could look like. There could definitely be a legislative intervention beyond forbidding the city from ever selling liens to a third party. And we're looking forward to working with you all on that. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Councilmember Nurse.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah and Paula, for breaking all of this down for us. We are going to move into Q&A session, but just an ask before people have to hop off and run to something, because I know it's a Monday and everyone's getting on the grind, is that if your office is interested in really being in the thinking space on what a legislative intervention could look like, or in advocacy around how to restructure this, we'd really obviously could use your support and help, and we'd like to be able to show that there is a coalition within this council that's committed to ensuring both it doesn't get reauthorized, but that it's fully restructured so that there is both accountability, for homeowners, but also for the city, and that we prevent our communities from being sold out to the private sector, which is really the main concern. I know our office had requested to do some legislation around this preventing the city from doing a tax lien sale or selling the liens to investment-backed firms. We hopefully will one day be able to introduce something like that into the council, hopefully. And we'd really love your support on that. But I think the real call to action here is to, if you have capacity within your team, we'd love your support. And in helping this coalition both create the table with the right folks within the city and the administration to really put our brains on this and figure out how to chart the path forward for restructuring it. So if there's any questions, I know there's been some back and forth. If folks want to raise your hand, use the raise hand thing, or you can also say you'd like to ask a question in the chat. And this coalition can take some of those. And also, I don't know if Paula or anyone wants to kind of just raise verbally the question that was dropped in the chat earlier.
I'm sure. So Edward, I think from Councilmember Brewer's office asked, I think right before I mentioned it, how this all intersects with the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. And if we are really hoping that that passes and that what having the city take back control over debt collection in the city will do is give tenants the opportunity to be not only first in line, but first in line for properties where their responsibility is to pay for the building and not the building and the land. And that will really make a huge difference in making it affordable for tenants to become owners. Is that the question that you wanted me to answer?
Yes, thank you. And I see
Paula, sorry, Councilmember, I just wanted to mention
yeah.
Along those lines, the opportunities to intersect our alternative vision with opportunities for Purchase Act legislation. I just wanted to mention that it's not only in the state legislature's hands at this moment. There are things that the city council can be doing. There is a resolution. I shared the link. If you can all support the city council resolution in support of TOPA, that would be a tremendous boon to the push to pass the legislation at the state level, as well as there's a community opportunity to purchase act, or COPA, that was introduced by Councilmember Rivera last year, Bill 1977. So we would love support on that legislation as well.
Awesome. I see Councilmember Barron's hand up.
Okay, this is Ms. Fisher from Councilmember Barron's office. I'm trying to find out how would tenants become eligible to be a part of this? What's the component that's needed so that we can get more tenants and people involved with this process?
Thank you.
We need to design a process that has a way for tenants to be involved. At the moment, we're in a big pause, right? So at the moment, the city does not have the authority to sell debt to the lien sale, but it also hasn't actually designed a new system, right? It hasn't hired the outreach staff. It hasn't designed the forms. It hasn't hired the law department staff that it would take to actually fully take control of debt collection. And one of the pieces that we think would be really important as part of that new system is the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which would give tenants a very clear way to become owners of the properties that their landlords couldn't maintain and where their landlords got into debt to the city.
Thank you.
Great. And I also just wanted to shout out that our chair of the Housing and Buildings Committee was here, Ms. Pirina Sanchez, is still here, and has definitely been very responsive and is is hopefully going to be throwing down and has expressed that they will be. So just wanted to shout out Pirina. I see Doreen. Do you have a hand up?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this. So yeah, Councilwoman Jordan is very passionate, interested in getting community land trust and affordable housing in the district. We actually met with Will earlier last week. Is the thing that's on April 6th, that by NICE, going to talk about the legislative aspects that we can push in the city council? I want like a little bit more clarification on that.
Yes, we'll be speaking about the legislation at the city level that city council can pass to help promote community land trusts in the city, as well as talking about the CLT initiative.
Okay, great, thank you. And Councilmember Nurse, we'll be in touch with Ryan so we can continue to coordinate and get that started.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks, Doreen. And if there's anyone here who we didn't have an email for, or kind of just got the link from our last emails dropping around and you want to make sure you're included, you could drop your email in the chat and we'll collect it. But I think we have everybody from, there's like 4 Sandy nurses on here because of the link I sent out this morning. So if we don't have your email, you could drop it on the chat and we'll collect it. And if folks have further follow-up questions, Ryan, will you drop your email or the coalition's email for direct? Awesome. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions, but please, thank you all for being here on this Monday morning. This is kind of our first step. I think the next step will be trying to pull the coalition back together and, start thinking about how we're going to turn this into a legislative advocacy plan and a plan to present to certain folks in the administration to really pull this together and see if we can permanently restructure this lien sale. And we will send around this so that folks who missed it can get it. And I see that somebody's asking for kind of like a summary. Yeah, and I think we can share this stuff around the slide deck and some of the presentations, maybe a 1-pager to send around to folks. Awesome. Thank you for all these emails. We will make sure to save the chat. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and enjoy your Monday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Look forward to working with you guys. Thank you, Sandy and Ryan and Will.
Thank you. I'm just going to leave it running so we keep the chat so we don't forget the, yeah.
Stay on for a second.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody wants to chat, we are here for the next 6 minutes, I think. Unless my computer dies. Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez.
Excuse me. I don't actually know how to save the chat. Ryan, do you know how to do it?
I think I can do it.
Oh, you know how to do it? Okay.
I think I have those powers. Oh, wait a second. This turned off. Something happened. My permissions changed. Oh, wait. No, I think I can. Hold on. Yes, I can. Ooh.
How do we save the chat? Just so I know.
Wait, hold on. It changed. It's those 3 little dots. Oh, there it is. Okay. So it's 3 little dots next to the messaging thing.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay. Great.
I do it old school, Ryan. Highlight, cut and paste.
Yeah.
I can email you this whole thing.
I'm so old school.
Yeah.
But it works.
Just so you both know, if you're like private messaging with someone, it's not really private. If the host saves the chat, they can see everything.
Learn that early on. And
Yeah, just saying that out loud since I'm being reminded of it as I see my own private messages. I'm like, oh yeah.
Okay.
So, they're not really private.
I
Okay.
can finally see what Deborah is talking about me behind my back.
I know, right?
Never, right?
Awesome. Well, I think everyone else who's on is
Yeah.
just maybe was like tuned out for a bit.
Yeah,
So
well, I think
they'll-
mostly this is us, right?
yeah.
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 Yeah, the couple of Sandy nurses are just like people. I sent the link out this morning while it was on from my thing, so a bunch of people logged in as my name. But I don't think I think we're pretty much done. But nice job, y'all. That was a good turnout. I was impressed.
Very good.
Turn
That
out.
was great.
We had a super majority.
Exactly. Well, great. Whatever, when you all circle up for next steps, we can send out to folks who wanted to stay involved.
So
Yeah.
Ryan, we shared a draft of like the detailed model that we think, so how this all could fit together with you. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to talk to Sandy about it yet.
No, I haven't.
Wanna,
Thursday and Friday were crazy.
Yeah. We're sort of like building this as we fly it. You're gonna join our meeting this afternoon, right?
I am.
Or you are.
Oh.
Do we want to have another meeting where we kind of go over this, like look for gaps? Because eventually we're gonna share it with City Council Finance, maybe not too long from now.
Yeah.
I can't run too late tonight.
Well, it sounds
Right.
like, but what, Sandy, should you be there when we have this conversation?
I can be there. Today's a flexible day for me, so I can be there.
Okay.
Let's do that. I think Ryan's gone over it and given us some feedback already, so I don't know that it was gonna be a super long conversation, but I think it'd be good to go over it with you. Here, I'm gonna put on the chat, if you wanna open it, before we start circulating it more. It's like, I would also love to send it to Pierina for feedback, but you should see it first.
I'll send it to Sam. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, and yeah, I know on our end, I think we were gonna circle with Andrew to get their contact, the contact they had for the commish. We've just been given a bunch of interagency emails, but it seemed like Andrew had a contact
Yeah.
because they were able to successfully find a meeting. So how would you, I mean, we could also see if the chair is interested. I mean, it sounds like there's been a lot of outreach, but not communication.
I think in terms of the chair, our next move is to share this like detailed scenario document that Emery asked for with staff. And then after we do that, we should go circle back to Justin. But
Okay.
It's good that staff asked for this, right? They were like, they want to understand what we want. It's good.
Okay. All right. Well, I will see you all later to go over the doc.
Awesome.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you all. This
4:30.
was great. Good job.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a good turnout. It was a good turnout.
And good
You guys
good
did
timing and yeah, smooth. Everything was smooth.
I was worried about the timing.
But it worked out.
Yeah, we
It
did
worked
good.
out, yes.
We were all worried
Yeah,
about the
really well.
timing. It paid off to worry.
Yeah. I think there'll be more questions later, but I think it was a lot of, it's a lot of like
Yeah.
finance numbers is not easy for anyone. So,
Yeah. All right, guys. See you
Hey,
this
all right.
afternoon.
See you in a bit.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.